It seems that many people from Africa, most especially Nigeria, mistakenly believe that Satanists are the Illuminati, and that we're hiring. This is a lie. Exploring the Nigerian Illuminati myth tonight on Satansplain.
Well, it's not Satan worship, it's Satanism. It's embracing the life-enriching things which have traditionally been given the devil's name. Pride, lust, earthly success, rational self-interest, atheism, humor, nonconformity, science, a passion for living, being selective about whom we love. We don't see these as shameful sins, but empowering ideals. And we also recognize the psychological power and fun of symbolism and aesthetics, so we utilize Satan as mythology's most fitting mascot for what we're about.
Satansplain, Satanic Talk with Church of Satan Magister Bill M.
I would like to begin this episode of Satansplain with a special message. It is a message for a specific audience whose primary language may not be English. For this reason, I am speaking slower and more clearly than I usually speak. I shall resume my normal speaking style later on in this episode. I am a Satanist. I am also a member of the Church of Satan, and I am, as you can see, the host of a Satanism podcast. As such, I often receive messages from people asking me how they can become a Satanist or join the Church of Satan. Some of these people who contact me do have a basic understanding of Satanism. Unfortunately, there are many who contact me with requests to join, but do not understand Satanism. More specifically, we Satanists receive many messages from Nigeria and sometimes other African countries. Almost always, these people are under the mistaken belief that we Satanists are the Illuminati. That is, an alleged secret society of people who control the world's wealth and power. It seems that every person from Nigeria who contacts us believes that we are all ultra-wealthy billionaires, and that by converting to Satanism or joining the Church of Satan, they can become wealthy too. If this is what you believe, then this message is for you. I am here to tell you that you have been told a lie. To address these common misconceptions you may have, there are 4 truths I would like to make clear. Truth number 1. Joining a satanic organization will not guarantee you wealth. You may have been told that Satanists are members of a group called the Illuminati, who are very rich and powerful. Again, this is simply a lie. There is no such thing as the Illuminati. They do not exist. There are certainly some rich and powerful people in the world, and there are long-standing religious beliefs that try to associate wealth or success with being in league with the devil, but this does not mean rich and powerful people in the world are devil worshippers. And it's certainly not true that merely becoming a devil worshipper will put you in a club of rich people. Likewise, you may have been told that the Freemasons are devil worshippers and control wealth and power in the world. Thus, you may have been told that being a devil worshipper will make you rich. Again, this is a lie. The Freemasons are a real organization, but they are not devil worshippers, nor do their members all have global wealth or power. There are certainly some Satanists who happen to be rich or powerful, but they became that way through the same way many other people became rich, which is through their own hard work in the real world. They did not become rich by merely joining a group of Satanists they found on the internet or selling their soul. In fact, you cannot sell your soul in exchange for money or power. This is an old superstition, which Satanists do not believe, as there is no proof that a soul exists or that such a transaction is possible. Once again, merely becoming a Satanist or joining the Church of Satan will not magically make you a rich person. Truth number 2. We, the Church of Satan, are only interested in members who truly understand our religion, which is Satanism. Satanism is a religion defined and described in the book The Satanic Bible by Anton Szandor LaVey. You can purchase this paperback book to learn what our religion is truly about and decide if it is for you. But again, if you thought that we are a group of devil worshippers who can make you automatically rich, then you have been told a lie. Truth number 3. We do not tolerate scams. Now, there is a reason why I mention this. There are many people from Nigeria and other countries who are professional scammers, crooks. I am not saying that you, the listener, are necessarily a crook, but there are many people in Nigeria who are. These sorts of scams are called 419 scams, and they are very popular. Likewise, as a resident of Nigeria yourself, as may be the case, you should not trust people who claim they are from the Illuminati or from the Church of Satan and can make you rich. Those people are lying to you. They are not real Satanists. They are not people in the Illuminati, and they are not the real Church of Satan. As already stated, merely being a Satanist cannot make you rich. And finally, truth number 4, we do not have a special church or branch of Satanism in your country, nor do we need one. Over the years, we've noticed that many residents of Africa attempt to use membership in some religious organization as a means to obtain funds from the government. It seems that if you tell the government that you are a minister of a local church, you can get money from that government. For this reason, the Church of Satan refuses applications for membership and other items sent in the mail from Africa, unless the resident from Africa first contacts the Church of Satan through email and demonstrates that they indeed have an understanding of our philosophy of Satanism. Then and only then will we process applications to join. More importantly, the Church of Satan decidedly does not have local branches or churches like many other religions do, as we have no need for them. Satanism is not a religion that requires congregating for church services. There are Church of Satan members who wish to socialize with other fellow Church of Satan members in their area, but they do so without the need for an official branch or local building owned by the organization. They simply contact each other online or in person and make plans accordingly. Any and all official correspondence can be done by networking through the Church of Satan's international headquarters in New York, official online sources, and so on. So those are my 4 points. If after hearing and understanding all of them you still wish to learn the truth about Satanism, you can visit our website, churchofsatan.com. Otherwise, please do not mistake websites and social media accounts with the word Satan or devil in the title with being the Illuminati. The Illuminati, again, does not exist, and there is no organization nor magic ritual which will make you a rich person. On a final note, this message is not to say that no residents of Africa understand Satanism at all. Indeed, there are some people in Africa who truly understand Satanism and do not have the misconceptions about us being the Illuminati or try to use affiliation to build a church in Africa. There are some Church of Satan members who do live in Africa. But unfortunately, again, the number of scam artists in Africa, and most especially Nigeria, who try to contact us is exceptionally high, as is the number of people who mistakenly think Satanism can grant them automatic wealth. So we are forced to take precautions. Thank you for listening. All right, and now for the rest of you listeners, I'm sorry if that was slow and painful for you to hear, but it had to be said. I'm going to take a break right now, and when I come back for the rest of the show, I'm going to talk about this strange phenomenon of people from Nigeria who think we're the Illuminati, and my own theories on where this whole thing comes from. In fact, this will be part one of a two-part rant on Satansplain, because in the next episode, I'll be digging deep into the topic of Freemasonry and the Illuminati and all that stuff that gets erroneously lumped in with Satanism. So stay tuned.
You are listening to Satansplain, real satanic talk with Church of Satan Magister Bill M. For questions, comments, and correspondence, send an email to bill@satansplain.com.
But you know what the coolest thing that Jesus ever did? You know the story about where he's at the wedding, and they run out of wine, and Jesus turns the water into wine? That's cool, That'd be great. I mean, if you liked wine. Otherwise, we kind of suck, out in the desert, middle of the day, trying to quench your thirst, take a big old, oh, jeez. Who did this? Was it Jesus? Yeah, we'll turn it back, all right? I got kids here. It's 103 degrees, Maybe we all don't want to get a buzz on right now.
That little bit of comedic blasphemy was brought to you by The Devil's Mischief, comedy that's not made for the masses. Listen to the show The Devil's Mischief on RadioFreeSatan.com.
Bill M. here with Satansplain. There are many ways to listen to Satansplain. You can listen on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Audible, Stitcher, and other places too. Also right on the official website, Satansplain.com. Follow Satansplain on Facebook and Twitter. All of the links are right on the website. Give us a like or a follow or a good rating, whatever is applicable and wherever applicable. I appreciate that. You can also email me. bill@satansplain.com is the email address. So I really wanted to get that message out in the first half of this episode because I think I'm going to be using this episode as a reply back to these sorts of people. Because this happens a lot. Some of you Satanists may have experienced this yourself. You may get a private message or a friend request on Facebook or whatever. You may be on a Satanism internet forum or a Satanism social media page. And whatever the case is, you'll see somebody who says, I want to join you or me join you. And so naturally, perhaps you're a little confused and ask, join what? Like we get that on Radio Free Satan. For example, I want to join you. It's like, well, you don't really join Radio Free Satan unless you're going to be a DJ or something like that. What do you mean? And in any case, in all these cases, it turns out that the person thinks that by virtue of being a Satanist, you will somehow grant them great wealth and power. Usually, not always, but usually this person will be from Nigeria. And again, even if you haven't personally witnessed this, believe me, I've seen it happen countless times. I've been an admin for years on the big public Church of Satan forum on Facebook, for example, and we would get so many join requests from these sorts of people, and it got so bad that when we would see a request to join the group and we saw that that person was from Nigeria, we just deny the request. That's what we do now. Because 100%, and I mean literally 100% of the people I've seen from Nigeria who contact the Church of Satan do so under the illusion that we're the Illuminati. And in fact, I've seen it happen with almost any website or social media page with devil or Satan in the title. Like, I mentioned Radio Free Satan, for example. I've gotten it also through The Devil's Mischief, my other podcast. So not only do these people believe in the Illuminati, not only do they believe that there is some sort of ultra-wealthy, ultra-secret oligarchy who runs the world's wealth, not only do these people believe you can contact this oligarchy through any social media page with Satan or devil in the title, but they also believe that we have all of these millionaire job positions in the Illuminati to give away to complete strangers who don't even have the courtesy to attach a job resume. So sad, so very sad. Now, I have fun with these people over on my Facebook page, Dr. Vincent Schitz, PhD in Satanic Memes, because, for years I tried reasoning with these people, and it usually got me nowhere. So finally, I just got so fed up that now what I do is reply to these people with nothing but lyrics from 1980s pop songs. I keep posting lines of, a particular 80s song. I pick a song, and I just reply to each of their questions with another line from that same song. Sometimes I stop responding after I post a few lines, but other times I can get through an entire song and they still don't understand what's going on. I remember I managed to get through the Kenny Loggins song Footloose with a woman from Nigeria once. Another time I got through Video Killed the Radio Star from the Bungles. It's fun. I screenshot all of that and I make memes of it for the Dr. Shits page. But this problem even goes beyond social media. In fact, at the Church of Satan, we get mail. We get physical mail still, postal mail, from people in Nigeria and some other African countries. And again, it's the same thing. They want to join. They want to join us, but they really, really don't understand Satanism. They think we can make them rich, either because they think we're the Illuminati or that we can teach them how to sell their soul in exchange for money, or a combination of both. In fact, it got so bad that, as I mentioned earlier, we have a disclaimer on the Church of Satan website saying, look, if you're from Africa, please email us first, because we want to make sure you're somebody who gets it. And then once that's clear, then, send us an application or whatever. But we've gotten so many kooky stuff from Africa, from scams to wishes to sell one's soul and all that, and from Nigeria especially. We've gotten so much that we just return mail like that unless the person has contacted us first. Now, fortunately, some people come through. As I said, I do know some Church of Satan members in Africa. There is one from Ethiopia I've been in correspondence with for many years. But unfortunately, they're the exception and not the rule. Now, what's even more bizarre is that this has been happening before the internet. One time, Magistra Peggy Nadremian, the high priestess of the Church of Satan, showed me an example from the Church of Satan archives of a letter they got from, I think, the 1980s, maybe even the 1970s, from somebody in Africa, and it was the same sort of thing, thinking that we could make them a rich person. So, this all begs the question, why does it happen? And, what makes people believe this? And why is it, at least more often than not, is it people from Nigeria? So, to be honest, I'm not exactly sure, but I'm going to give you my hypothesis on all of this. First, forget about Africa for a moment. What is the connection between Satanism, Freemasonry, and the Illuminati? It seems to me that there are several different, otherwise unrelated conspiracy theories and fables and urban legends wrapped up in this whole thing. Is there a connection between Satanism and great wealth, for example? Well, yeah, in a couple of ways. I mean, there are the old folk tales about people selling their soul to the devil to get great fortune or whatever. It's pure mythical folklore, but there are still some gullible people in the 21st century who believe it. There's also the general notion of associating wealth or success with the devil or something satanic. Because, the holy, the meek thing to do, in not just Christianity, but spiritual religions in general, is to renounce materialism and, renounce trying to get money and all that. It's a recurring theme in spirituality. Obviously, people like Joel Osteen have some way or another, they rationalize it, I'm sure. But when it comes to actual Satanism, one of the reasons why we call our religion Satanism is because we take these notions that it's bad to have money, or it's bad to be successful, or it's bad to enjoy material things, and we wear it on our sleeve. I personally like money. I like sex. I like being an atheist. I take pride in being skeptical. I like humor rather than piety. So if these sorts of things are what have been traditionally been called satanic, been given the devil's name, then hey, call me a Satanist. Now, what about Satanism and Freemasonry? Is there a connection there? Well, there has been a lot of propaganda leveled at the Freemasons. A lot of this comes from a series of propaganda pieces written in the late 1800s by a fellow named Leo Taxil. And he claimed, among other things, that the Freemasons were devil worshippers. And they use the image of a 5-pointed star here, and they secretly worship Baphomet or Lucifer, and they have this strange symbol here, blah, blah, blah. So there are people to this day who still believe those sorts of stories. Additionally, there are conspiracy theories about Freemasons being related to the Illuminati, which is allegedly this oligarchy of people who secretly own and control everything in the world. Now, it was true that there was an actual group called the Illuminati. They were in Bavaria, which is in present-day Germany. And the group was modeled after Freemasonry. It was a fraternal organization with its own rituals and code of ethics and whatnot. But that doesn't exist anymore. It's been dead for a long time. Nevertheless, there are people who believe that the Illuminati is real and that it's somehow connected to the Freemasons or came out of the Freemasons. And when you combine that with the notion that Freemasons are devil worshippers, as well as the notion that to be rich and powerful, you must have sold your soul to the devil or something, then you can see how all of this may have gotten, wrapped up and conflated to the same thing. Most often these days you see the QAnon conspiracy theory, or the sorts of conspiracy theories that Alex Jones and similar people like him are going on about all the time. That there are rich and powerful people who are trying to control things in the world in a particular way on a global scale, which in and of itself, I would say, is a real thing. But where Alex Jones and all these people lose me is that they add on, these global elitists form a private cabal where they have a club and they interact all the time. And they're also devil worshippers who meet for satanic rituals in key places like Bohemian Grove. And they eat babies and blah, blah, blah. So, as is typical with conspiracy theories, the conspiracy theorists will look for little symbols that really aren't there to try to connect the dots on their beliefs. In fact, there's a whole running gag you may have seen online. It's kind of a meme where people will zoom in on a photo and see a triangle in it somewhere. Like maybe a wrinkle in somebody's shirt kind of forms a triangle, and they'll zoom in and they'll say, aha, draw a red circle around it, zoom in on it. And they point to the triangle and they say, Illuminati confirmed, caption it. A funny little meme. But anyway, that's a brief overview of how these stories between the Freemasons, the Illuminati, and Satanism have overlapped and gotten mixed up together. In the next episode of Satansplain, I'm going to get down into the more historic details about all of this. But for now, let's get back to this observation about Africa and this phenomenon of Africans, most especially Nigerians, who see a website or a social media site with devil or Satan in the name, and they think that it's a recruiting station for a billionaire job position in the Illuminati, Somehow, all of what I've mentioned about devil worship and the Freemasons and the Illuminati gets mistranslated as, okay, Satanists must be rich and powerful, so if I just talk to a Satanist, he can tell me how to become a Satanist so I can get rich too. One positive thing I will say with this take is that it's kind of satanic when you think about it. Because, most people these days hear tales about the Freemasons being devil worshippers and the Illuminati and these people being secretly rich and in power and getting this power from the devil and so on. And for the people who believe that sort of stuff, most people will think, oh my God, we have to do something to stop this. We have to be aware of what they're doing. There are these evil people working with the power of Satan. But in this case, you have people from Nigeria who say, wait a minute, rich and powerful devil worshippers? Wow, that sounds amazing. Like, where do I sign up? So again, when you think of it that way, ironically, it's kind of a satanic take. Granted, it's still based on a misconception and superstitions, but that the response is at least based on self-interest. How can I become rich? So anyway, just an amusing thing I have to say. Now, when it comes to trying to explain why this phenomenon seems to come mostly from Nigeria, I've heard different guesses from people, and I've heard some proposed explanations, and I don't really buy some of them. For example, I've heard people who try to explain it with, well, it's Africa, and Africa is full of superstitious people. To which I say, yeah, maybe, but the same can be said about lots of other places in the world. I mean, look here in first world countries. There are so many people here in the United States who believe in the devil and believe you can make deals with the devil, not to mention believe in the Illuminati. And again, it doesn't really answer why Nigeria as opposed to other countries in Africa. And people may likewise say, well, there's not only a lack of education in Africa, but also a lot of poverty and desperation, which again begs me to point out that first of all, there are other countries in the world that have poverty and desperation. And even if we restrict things to Africa or just sub-Saharan Africa, why would we be getting these sorts of messages from Nigeria? Why don't we get as many emails, nearly as many emails from people in Kenya or Chad or the Republic of the Congo or these surrounding countries? I mean, sometimes that does happen. A couple of years back, I was interviewed for a newspaper in Kenya because somebody had claimed to set up a branch of the Church of Satan there, and I was explaining that, no, this is a fraud, that's not us. Somebody is falsely using our name. You know, we don't have chapters like that because we don't need them, and so on. So, again, not 100% of the people with these sorts of beliefs I've been talking about are from Nigeria, but seemingly 100% of the people from Nigeria who contact Satanists do have those beliefs, and that's why they're contacting Satanists. I was on the Public Church of Satan forum on Facebook when this topic happened to come up. The topic came up of Nigerians messaging Satanists and asking if they can join the Illuminati. And like I said, we get people like that trying to join the group. We get them like every week there. And at this, like I said, at this point, when we see somebody's from Nigeria, we just hit decline. We don't bother anymore. Again, 100% of the time, it's these Illuminati-obsessed people. Anyway, the topic comes up, and with that, the question of, hey, what's up with all these people from Nigeria who think we're in the Illuminati? And there was a guy there who was not a Church of Satan member, but he was in the forum, because, you know, the forum is a place where both members and non-members can talk about Satanism. And anyway, this guy answered, well, the people you're talking about are from Africa, and Africa is just full of a bunch of stupid mud hut dwellers who are behind the rest of civilization, and that's why all this ignorance comes from Africa. They haven't built multi-story buildings. They haven't done this other technology. And yeah, this guy apparently believes that the whole continent of Africa looks something like, straight out of a front cover of National Geographic. And I told him, no, that's not true. The entire continent of Africa does not look like something out of National Geographic. Some parts of Africa do. That's how they get photographed and in National Geographic. But otherwise, there are skyscrapers and factories and cars and cities and stuff, just like you find on the other continents. Those do exist in Africa. In any case, I know that this guy from Nigeria who was asking how to join the Illuminati was certainly not some kind of mud hut dweller. And so this guy replied back to me, oh, really? Well, how do you know he's not? How do you know he's not one of these mud hut dwellers? I said, well, because for starters, he contacted us on the internet. I don't think the thread went on for much longer after that. So in trying to answer the real question here, I thought, okay, in trying to answer why this stuff happens from Nigeria, what do we know about Nigeria? Well, I do know that Nigeria is famous for 419 scams. It's not something that I think explains the Illuminati Satanism thing, but it's something I think is worth spending a few minutes to talk about as we try to get a picture of what Nigeria may be like. So the 419 scam gets its name from Article 419 of Nigeria's Criminal Code, which concerns frauds and scams. Sometimes the 419 scam is also called the Bank of Nigeria scam, or the advance fee scam in general. So I'm sure a lot of you listeners are already familiar with this. If not, well, the scam goes something like this. So you're checking your email or your private messages on social media, and you'll see an email or a message from somebody who says he's in Africa and he has this huge fortune of money from the diamond business, $12 million sitting in this bank account in the Bank of Nigeria, but he can't take it out because the government has frozen the account, or he can't use his name because he's a civil servant and he's barred from taking this money, or some excuse like that. And so he needs your help in getting this money into a different account. If you help him, he'll give you like a 25% cut of the fortune. So let's say you write back to him and you agree. Let's say you buy this story. I mean, $3 million sounds nice after all. Plus, you're doing a real humanitarian thing in helping this, oppressed person in Africa. So you reply back. He says, okay, the first thing I need is I need help paying for this transaction fee. So you send him some money, and then he says, oh no, something else went wrong. I need more money. And then eventually it's okay, we're all set. Just give me your bank account information and I can transfer those millions of dollars to you. You really helped me out. God bless you, sir. So basically, the long and short of it is there is no millions of dollars sitting in the Bank of Nigeria under his name. It is a scam. He lied about the whole thing and he got your private information to help suck your bank account dry. Then he deletes his email address. He never writes you back again, and he just goes on to the next victim. So that is the gist of the 419 scam. Sometimes it's money in the Bank of Nigeria. Sometimes the story is that it's a check that has to be cashed against an American bank, and that's why this guy needs your help. Or sometimes it's as simple as, hey, you won the international lottery game. You've won $8 million. We just need you to pay this $50 transaction fee, and it's yours. And of course, you don't get the money. So there are countless variations of this, but one of its names, again, is the advance fee scam, because in all cases, regardless of what fictional or heartbreaking story is used to dress it up, it always comes down to the promise of some fortune that you'll get if you pay some sort of fee to help it along in advance, and then the scammer takes your money and leaves. And this predates the internet, by the way. This scam predates the internet. People were doing this with chain letters through the postal mail before. There was one happening in the early 20th century, I guess, and it was called the Spanish prisoner scam. You can look that up, where a person claims to be from Spain and wants help funding this espionage, where there's children who are locked up and you have to rescue them, stuff like that. But there is a documented case of a scammer from Nigeria doing this as far back as 1920. He went by the name Professor Krentzel, and he wrote letters trying to scam people like this, and was charged with 3 counts of fraud in 1921. Now, here's the funny part. Krentzel got off. According to an article I got about this from Newsweek that was written in 2016, the article is titled The Origins of Nigeria's Notorious 419 Scams. The article says that the magistrate presiding over this case discharged Krentzel with a caution on the first count and acquitted him on the 2 other counts for lack of corroborating evidence. And Krentzel bragged that he got off because of his own magic juju powers. So, how about that? Nigerians who believe they can get away with scamming thanks to occult powers. It's like we've come full circle on this. But yeah, in any case, this is something that has been going on all over the world, but it's always been especially bad in Nigeria. In fact, it got so bad in Nigeria that in 1991, the Bank of Nigeria had to issue a public statement saying, look, we don't have all this money in the special account that people are talking about, or this story about this civil war that led to this, that's not true at all. People who send you these things are just trying to scam you. Now, as you can imagine, these incidents of these 419 scams went up exponentially with the internet because you don't need to buy stamps to send millions of emails. And if the chance of somebody falling for this scam is 1 in 1,000, well, you just email thousands and thousands of people and eventually you'll get that gullible person. I mean, I've been getting these sorts of emails myself probably for about as long as I've been using the internet, which has been about close to 30 years. But I noticed about 10 or 15 years ago, the spelling and the grammar of these letters were getting worse and worse. And my immediate thought was, oh, geez, these scammers are so stupid. They can't even spell this correctly. This doesn't look legit at all. But then I remember reading an article somewhere that later explained, no, sometimes that kind of misspelling and stuff is deliberate, because when you send millions of these emails out, that one person who is still dumb enough to think, this is an official bank document or whatever, that person who's dumb enough to fall for it despite all the crappy writing, that person is precisely the sort of person you want, the sort of person who's going to be easier to scam, somebody most likely to be stupid enough to manipulate. Another thing I want to say about 419 scams before we move on is that there's a website which has been around for many, many years, and it's called 419eater.com. And it's a group of people who basically scam the scammers. A lot of these 419 scammers will basically do anything to make you feel that you can trust them. So there have been pranks, like people respond back and, play along with these 419 scammers. And they'll say, okay, I'll send you the money to help the Bank of Nigeria, but to make sure I know you're a real person, send me a photo of yourself. Send me a photo of yourself balancing an orange on your head. Or send me a photo of yourself holding this sign that says, I'm into bestiality. And of course, the photos they get back are pretty hilarious. And there were some cases where they were able to scam money out of the scammers. So lots of great elaborate hoaxes on the hoaxers. So check that out sometime, 419eaters.com. Now, I just spent some time talking about 419 scams, but this still doesn't explain the Illuminati people in Nigeria, or the Illuminators, as I call them. Because after all, these are not people emailing us Satanists and promising to make us rich. They are asking if we can make them rich. Now, there is another scam of sorts, however, from Nigeria that relates to religion, and to explain what I'm talking about, I'm going to read you a note that's right from the official Church of Satan site, churchofsatan.com. Quote, if you are a resident of a nation situated on the African continent, do not send any attempts to register with us unless you have contacted us via email and gained pre-approval. And I read that, I explained that before, but listen to this part. We've discovered that many unscrupulous residents of these nations attempt to use membership in religious organizations as a means to obtain funds from their governments under the pretense of being a representative of an organization. Sincere students of our philosophy from these nations must contact us via email first and demonstrate a knowledge of our philosophy before we will pre-approve an attempt at registered membership. Our apologies to those who resonate with Satanism in these lands, but the ratio of scam artists is exceptionally high, and this is our most direct recourse. Any postal mail or payment attempts that are not approved will be refused, and we are not responsible for the return of unauthorized postal sendings. So that is the message from the Church of Satan, and yes, it seems that people in Africa, and especially Nigeria, try to set up churches for the purpose of getting funds from the government. I'm sure that if you can point to evidence of an existing church and say, look, we're a branch of this real church, then that can lend some credibility when you're trying to set something up in Nigeria. I'm not so sure a self-declared branch of the Church of Satan would go over that well publicly in some of these places, but here is an article from about 5 years ago from Forbes Africa talking about the phenomenon. The article is titled, Is It Time to Tax Nigeria's Churches? Well, anybody who understands pentagonal revisionism knows my answer to that question. Yeah, tax the churches. But to read you an excerpt from this article, quote, religious institutions are not taxed in Nigeria because the current legal regime grants them a tax-exempt status. This is reflected in a number of tax legislations in Nigeria, which grant ecclesiastical bodies, alongside charitable and educational institutions of a public nature, a tax-exempt status unless they engage in a trade or business. This situation is similar to the United States. Irrespective of the law, there are a number of reasons, I dare say valid reasons, these institutions should be taxed. The first reason is that churches have branched out into profitable activities, such as owning expensive private schools and publishing houses, while enjoying their tax-exempt status. For this reason, Chief Damola Sariki, a former minister of state for Interior, stated that religious institutions are not carrying out charitable entities but building empires, using revenues from their businesses to purchase private jets and renting out apartments in the church camps, but refusing to pay land use charges to the government. This statement by a former government official shows the intensity of the debate and reflects the concern of a majority of Nigerians. Another reason advanced by the supporters of the idea of taxing religious institutions is that religious leaders are getting extremely rich over their non-taxable profits. In 2011, a Forbes ranking of the 10 richest pastors in the world had 5 Nigerians. Let me repeat that line. In 2011, a Forbes ranking of the 10 richest pastors in the world, half of them were from Nigeria. The richest on that list is Nigeria's pastor David Oyedepo, with an estimated net worth of $150 million. Also worthy of note is that religious institutions contribute approximately 2.5% to the GDP, which is the same as the financial sector. So that's the end of the article excerpt. Now, again, people contacting us wanting to join the Illuminati are not asking if they can start a branch of the Church of Satan in Nigeria. I realize that, but sometimes we do get emails of people who do want to say they want to start a branch and whatnot, and what I just read may lend some insight into why that's the case. But to further answer the question of why these messages are predominantly coming from Nigeria, I think the bottom line is that Nigeria just has much bigger numbers in terms of people who would do that. Now, let me list a few statistics about Nigeria to explain what I mean. First of all, I would argue that you're unlikely to hear tales about devil worship or selling your soul unless you live in a predominantly Christian nation. Now, per capita, Nigeria is not the most Christian country in Africa. It turns out that Nigeria is roughly 50-50 Christian and Muslim. Nigeria does, however, have the highest total number of Christians than any other African country, by far. And that's largely due to the fact that of all African countries, Nigeria has the highest human population, period. So statistically, we would expect anyway that any random emails we get from strangers in Africa would be more likely to come from Nigeria, since that's where you'd find the most number of people, and thus the most number of people with internet access. And it turns out that of all the countries in the world, do you know where Nigeria ranks in terms of number of internet users? They are number 6. The top 3 countries are China, India, and the United States, but Nigeria has by far the most number of internet users in Africa, and again, 6th for all countries all over the world. Over 136 million internet users, which is about 64% of the population. In fact, Nigeria not only has the most number of internet users of all African nations, but also the most number of internet users per capita of any other African nation. So once again, the math says that if you are to get an email from a random stranger from anywhere in the entire continent of Africa, chances are very good that it will come from Nigeria. But even so, the religious factor of Nigeria, I suspect, is important. Constitutionally, Nigeria does have freedom of religion. It's been that way since at least 1999. Their constitution forbids religious discrimination and says that there is no state religion. I've had some friends from outside of the U.S. who've said they don't understand why there are seemingly so many crazy religious Christians in the United States, given that, we have freedom of religion, and more importantly, there's no state religion. Whereas I think in some Scandinavian countries, you are registered at birth as being part of the state church, whether you like it or not. And yet we don't really see so much religious fundamentalism there. But just to quickly finish this side point, one of the reasons for all this is that since there is no state religion in the U.S., that lets other religions compete against each other in the free market of ideas. And what this usually means is that the religions or specific denominations that are more aggressive with proselytizing and recruiting are, they're more likely to obtain the bigger numbers. So, getting back to Nigeria, it turns out that Nigeria is a highly religious country. Plus, the high populations of Muslims versus Christians make for a lot of tension. I was reading a report I found done by the United States Commission on Internal Religious Freedom. I'll try to give the link for that into the description of this episode on Satansplain.com. But they rank different countries by how much religious freedom they seem to have. And Nigeria, they say, does have religious freedom technically, but there is a lot of crazy stuff going on. Kidnapping, the assassination of priests. I won't go into all the details now, but the bottom line is, Nigeria is a highly religious country, and religion plays a huge role there in politics. There are parts of Nigeria ruled by Sharia law, apparently. Lots of crazy religious stuff going on in Nigeria. Lots of it. Another statistics that I think is meaningful is that Nigeria's national language is English. There are, in fact, many separate languages spoken in Nigeria, but nationally they push for English, I guess to help unify the citizens. And a lot of the conspiracy theories and whatnot on the internet about the Illuminati and the Freemasons and conspiracy theory crap in general, I would suspect is in English. And if that's correct, then it would follow that people who can read and speak English, even poorly, and who can get online, would be running into those sorts of stories, and also be able to contact Satanists, they find, especially if they do a search on the web for, rich people, or how do I get rich, who controls the money, who has the money. And here is yet another statistic. Nigeria, it turns out, has a high GDP, but a low score on the Human Development Index. Basically, the GDP means economically they do surprisingly well compared to their neighbors, and my hunch is that this would translate to also having better technological development than their neighbors, more internet access, more people with smartphones and what have you. But the Human Development Index rating basically means that Nigeria is considered one of the most corrupt nations in the world. To quote Wikipedia's page on Nigeria, quote, corruption runs through every level of Nigerian government, from considerable contract fraud at the top, through petty bribery, money laundering schemes, embezzlement, and seizing salaries from fake workers. It is estimated that corruption within the state apparatus costs the country billions of dollars every year. So now that I've laid out all that information, let me recap. Nigeria. It's a country where scams and get-rich-quick schemes are basically ingrained in the culture itself in more ways than one. Nigeria is a country with a lot of English speakers, though perhaps not a whole lot of English scholars, if you will. Nigeria has more internet technology, perhaps especially compared to other countries where corruption runs high. Nigeria has way more people, way more people on the internet than any of its neighbors on the continent. Nigeria has a lot of religious people to the point where the country gets put on watch lists. So when you add all of this up, I think it explains why belief in quick, rich schemes, belief in conspiracy theories, belief in a literal Satan, and enough skills in English to read something but not comprehend it fully are all things that may be coming to your inbox from Nigeria. That's my hypothesis. Thank you for listening. As I said, I have much, much more to cover about the Freemasons and the mythical Illuminati and how these stories get mixed up with Satanism. That will be in the next episode of Satansplain. Until then, hail Satan. You have been listening to Satansplain. If you have enjoyed this episode, please give it a like and subscribe where available. For more information on the show, visit Satansplain.com. And to learn more about Satanism itself, visit churchofsatan.com. This episode, copyright 2022, Magister Bill M.